Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Coming to you direct from New York City, this is Dennis, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach, coming to you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And that's right, you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Ellen, coming to you from the beautiful island of St. Bart's. And today we have a very special guest joining us on Light Talk.
Oh my God, there are a lot of people on today. This is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers
and Sister.
That's right, Ellen. Welcome, everyone, to episode 444. And that's a magic number today, 444. So if someone says 444, a duck will fly down and they'll get $50. Today, we welcome back Lumen Brothers Zach Borve to the show. Hey, Zach, how you doing? I want our listeners to know that Zach is sitting in a chair eating bacon today. The worst thing you could do on the high holy days.
Bacon wrapped shrimp.
No, he's not.
He's got a bacon sandwich.
Bacon wrapped shrimp.
Right, exactly.
Double trafe.
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay. So today, as you heard Ellen saying, we have a very special guest as part of our Young Designers series, and that is Cort Lawrence. Is that correct? Cort, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You got me correct. I feel bad for Zach, but Zach, we'll get you next time.
It's a lifetime journey for me. Don't worry.
It's my brain. What can I tell you? So, Ellen, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Cort's very interesting career?
I'd be happy to. Born in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, Cort began his career as a render artist, helping bring other designers' ideas to life through 3D modeling. It gave him a visual foundation, but not a practical one. Determined to understand how a show truly comes together, he started over as a stagehand, learning the mechanics of touring from the ground up. He already knew the objects. Now he learned the reason behind them. Along the way, Cort worked with designers like Paul Normandale and Scott Holthouse, whose creative instincts helped shape his own. He credits production manager Narcy Martinez for teaching him the most valuable lesson of all, how to lead through challenges with calm, direction, and persistence. In 2022, Cort co-founded Raw Cereal with partner Anders Ram. The studio was built on the belief that collaboration, or cooperation if you will, creates better outcomes. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Raw Cereal now supports touring productions, brand experiences, and one-night-only events with a mix of visual direction, technical leadership, and creative care. Cort has traveled the world designing shows in stadiums, arenas, and outdoor festivals. He now lives in Pittsburgh with his wife Zoe and continues to lead creative work around the world. There you go. Welcome to Light Talk.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks for the intro. I loved it, Ellen.
Yeah. And Cort is a young designer compared to us. I mean, he could be 2 or 3 times our age.
Age is just a number. It's just a number.
That's right. That's right.
And that's an imperial number,
You didn't say that a minute ago. You said, I'm working with these old guys who are 60.
Steve, if you don't mind my saying, I think what Cort said was there are people old out there working as old as 60. I think that's the way it was put.
Well, you know what I always say, age is just a number and mine is unlisted.
Very nice.
To kick this off, Cort, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, which doesn't seem to be that long ago, and what made you get interested in the world of design?
I love that, episode 444 is going to be all about numbers.
The duck just came down. You got $50. So
Right,
we'll
say the secret word.
We'll keep cracking jokes.
That's
but,
how old we are. We're actually quoting Groucho Marx from his television show. So there you go.
But yes, not too long ago, in my earlier age, I spent time in sports. But I really found my creative passions within high school. And I would say elementary or middle school and high school. At that time, technology was, continuing to boom, and laptops became such a fast-paced thing with, Apple really had the cornerstone on Final Cut and iMovie. And so I learned, a lot of my creative storytelling through media, through film and television. And I always thought I was going to go into film and TV. But then I found my next passion, which was in 3D modeling, which, 3D modeling now is just as good as architecture because you can really go so far. And that really kind of continued to snowball into learning CAD drafting, to learning. And this was all self-taught. I did not have any, formal teaching in, a university. This was all YouTube University and learning through the processes of just trying things out. And that's when, I really struck a nerve with the program Cinema 4D. And that's honestly, I have to credit my career to that program because that's what connected me with all these designers, whether young or old. I connected with them. And
What is Cinema 4D? I don't know that.
Cinema 4D is it's a rendering program. Now it's used a lot in motion graphics, and if you work in Vectorworks, Vectorworks and Cinema 4D are owned by Nemetschek, and a lot of people who are creating CAD plots within Vectorworks send it to Cinema 4D to be rendered.
Okay.
And so I live in Cinema 4D and I create these things that sell clients. They need to see what the stage is going to look like. They need to see how the set piece is going to look under light, or it's going to look in the sun, or all these unique things. So, I didn't know, again, the technical side of this industry. I knew the creative side.
Can I stop you for a second? Doesn't Cinema 4D belong to Maxon?
Yes, but they are owned by ultimately Nemetschek.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that
Learn
was
something every day.
Yep, that was. Now it wasn't always that way. They did combine efforts, or now they're cooperating together on the next steps of really aligning two sides of the picture, which is creative and technical. Though, right when you put those two together, I mean that's where the magic is. That's how shows are made. That's how our industry was really, brought into this new era, was, finding those two worlds.
I got to apologize for Dennis right now, because you mentioned that you grew up, Cort, with iPhones and iPads. Dennis grew up with Etch-a-Sketches and abacuses.
Didn't we all? Are you kidding? My mother's first telephone in our new house in 1950 was a 4-party line.
Four
and you
parties.
had to wait to see how many times it rang before you knew if it was for you or not.
That's right.
And you could pick it up and say to the operator, "Hey, Gladys, get me Cort," and she'd plug you in.
I remember those, Ellen. I remember the party lines.
You grew up with Aunt B and Mayberry.
And plots, plots used to be hand drawn.
That's
They
right.
were
We actually
hand-drawn.
did that. Yeah, we hand
What do you mean used to be?
All right, we're making him feel sort of.
I know. We're being bad.
Yeah, really.
Right. Zach saying, I'm not a part of these guys.
Cort, I don't know how we got stuck with these old people.
Oh, there he is. The golden tones of Zach. Zach, what do you have for Cort today?
Well, I'm actually curious, Cort, as someone who also works a lot in the 3D space as a video and media designer. One of the challenges that I find a lot is that, especially when I'm working, with some talented animators, I'm often finding that I have to explain to a lot of people sort of the difference between creating content and designing for live entertainment versus designing for what I call the screen, making TV commercials or making a television show, where I say, what we're creating is part of the story. It's not the story. So as somebody who has such an extensive background in 3D, like, how do you surf and navigate dealing with clients and with your staff about that very thing of, like, we're going to design this for the screen, but also I have in my brain that I have to think about what this is going to be like in real life, and that it's never going to be that on the screen, no matter how beautiful I can approximate it.
Absolutely. And screens are everywhere these days. I mean, that's become a norm. And we have to utilize them in new and unique ways. It's more than just putting things on the screen. It's really bringing the screen into the environment. So, over here at Raw Cereal, we actually use the screen to extend our environment. we are putting set extensions because, again, I see myself as a show designer, lighting, scenic, production, staging, all those elements rolled into one. And if you have a screen in there, you can then extend that entire world, and you're really bringing the audience as well as the performer or the, whoever is, on stage or being a part of this. And I think, we're starting to see that in film and television as well, that these screens are now becoming immersive and bringing these larger to life environments. It used to be green screen that would then be compositing, and now we've brought the screen to the people. So, it is a tough thing. Again, there's so many different worlds, but we all use the same programs. We all have similar thoughts, but 1 degree off could mean the difference between, a really stylish commercial or a commercial that is bringing the audience into a new world. So it's definitely a different trains of thought. And over here, we're fortunate to have, such a good team that have learned both sides. And that's through us teaching them, the true characteristics of concerts. The same way I learned. I had to learn on the road, putting truss together, bolting it together, loading into a truck, doing those things, and then having our creative team be a part of that same process. Now they didn't have to get dirty in the back of a truck, but they did have to understand, the true purpose of why we do this with technology and how the technology is really used in these great shows, these productions. They're everywhere. We just did Saturday Night Live with our client Morgan Wallen, and on the back screen, we portrayed a velvet curtain. Now, it was easier to us to put a velvet curtain on the video wall versus bring in an actual velvet curtain, because we could light it, we could texture it, we could add little dust happening all within seconds, which again is faster and easier on the SNL team, where they don't have to rig up things in that small space. And TV, those spaces are small, and then you get the screen on there, and on camera it looks massive. It's incredible.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about technology?
Happy to.
Obviously, you are right at the edge of all this. This is fantastic. And we talk about AI a lot on this program. And when we get designers on, we've had Bob Boniol on the show. We've talked about AI. And now, we've got a great production designer here again, John. And I'm just really curious that with the speed of AI and how fast it's moving. By the way, I just got a notification that there's a new Alexa Plus that's going to get even more personal, which freaks me out because I've told the story on the show before that my wife and I were having a very romantic, intimate moment. And in the middle of it, she said, I have some video content that you may be interested in. And I thought, well, that is getting a little bit too crazy for me, right? So anyway, but getting back, with the speed of AI, first of all, how do you incorporate AI into your work? And what would you hope to see happen with AI in the future that could expand your work more? Give you the tools to expand your work.
So first of all, shout out to Bob Boniol. So we were able to, obviously he has been in the industry a good amount of time, and we were fortunate to speak together at USITT last year on this exact topic, because there are so many students and a lot of this industry that are constantly putting their eyes on AI. It's a fast moving train, and, we've had to adapt and put it directly into our pipelines, whether it's on the front end pipeline, helping us with creative ideation and honestly helping me speed up my design process, and we talked a little bit about Cinema 4D earlier. So a lot of what we're doing, years ago, not too long ago, we would render the entire show. You would have the production, you would have the lights, you would have the crowd, you would have everything. But now we can render the simplest things. We can render just the screen or just the stage and utilize AI to add in the crowd, add in the lights. And so it makes that process, honestly, maybe 90% faster. And 90% faster is, that's unheard of. And then same thing on the back end with video content. Now we're utilizing AI to speed up render process, help us with simple things. We can take a screenshot of our elements that we create. That way we're still doing everything we can and not having AI do it for us, but then utilize AI to add in the simple things. If you wanted your velvet curtain to have a little bit of wind billowing through it, the AI can do that. You don't have to simulate wind in a 3D environment and spend time rendering these things. So that's where it's really helping out. Now, as far as, where some people are very fearful of, AI taking jobs and, really, slowing things down or kind of changing the trajectory of our industry, honestly, I think it's going to bring more jobs. We have people who are specifically using AI to assist with creative development and story development and really helping add more value to these shows. Production has always been very simple, and now we are so far advanced, and these shows are getting more and more complicated because we can use technology to help us sift through all those unnecessary tasks and really clean things up. So, AI is seen across the board, whether you're using it in video or lighting. There's a few great lighting programmers out there that are using AI to essentially look at an audio track, find those waveforms, kind of stamp out the important moments. Oh, this is a verse, this is a chorus. And that, again, is just saving time. Now, it doesn't take away from the lighting programmer's ultimate job of programming the lights and kind of making them do what they need to do, but it's saving them time on, really finding those special moments, because it's going to do about half the job, kind of structuring a song for them. So again, we see so many accessible tools and so many, unique, not shortcuts, but, paths to success, and those paths are really kind of built upon AI, and AI is kind of lighting the way on a few of those where, some paths you would have to go along and it might not work out. And you're spending time trying this out, trying that out. And now AI is kind of being a true R&D department, for very little cost.
It's interesting you say that because some people have been saying that like major acts, some of the big performers are coming in with their own, like a deck of 500 AI generated images. And they just go right to their management goes right to, not to name names, but a company like Tate, for example, and says, build that. So the whole designer middleman has been cut out. You think that's happening, or is that just a hallucination over here?
No, I do think that is an extreme possibility. But then again, that's why you see Tate, really growing as a company, because now they have to have the team that digests all that. Now, not to dig too deep in there, but if a manager or an artist is, paying somebody to create these AI renderings, they're also paying just as much money to have a team put together all the technical background behind it. So, the technical people, and I think that's a good area for a lot of our industry to continue going. I mean, there will never be an AI that can replace somebody from building things, machining things, putting them together, welding, electrical wiring, all those.
You don't think robots can eventually do a lot of that, the welding and stuff?
Not in a creative industry. Everything is so bespoke and custom. And, I think, again, there's going to be ways to speed up the process and make things faster and more efficient, but there still has to be a lot of people that are putting it together and taking it down and putting it into a truck. So there's always going to be a lot of those certain jobs. Now, as far as, does it make it a little easier to, come up with a bunch of ideas and throw them at the wall and take it to a fabrication company and build them? Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've done it. I think it's gotten me again, just in a new frame of mind, in a new place to create something, whether it's a simple heart set piece, and send it. And the only thing that AI really doesn't know is scale. I mean, and that's probably the biggest thing, because it doesn't know the height of your stage. It doesn't know the weight that the roof can hold. It doesn't know all those things. So, I mean, again, from an engineering background, AI doesn't have that strength within mathematics.
But couldn't you feed it that information?
You can, but I mean, it takes time. We try, and it really depends on how much time you want to put into these processes.
I think that's really interesting, that what you've touched upon there is something that I agree with in terms of engineering, that is a place where, human intervention is always going to be needed. Like, one of the things I think, especially in like theater, is I can't imagine there being a point where people will be comfortable relying on AI for safety.
No.
Not
at all.
There's always going to be a human that has to be involved when there's a potential safety issue.
Absolutely.
As we were discussing before we started recording, it sounds a little bit like you're leading us into cooperation versus collaboration and what this world is becoming.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. Now, when it comes to AI, that's where I think, again, and I'm personally still trying to help distinguish collaboration versus cooperation. I think cooperation is going to become more important these days as we really rely on the people we trust, rely on the people that are experienced, rely on people that are knowledgeable, and you can collaborate with anybody. When you go down to a restaurant like Chipotle, you are collaborating with that person to make something, right?
Yeah.
You're giving, they're taking, you're giving, they're taking, there's a relationship there. Now, as far as cooperation goes, cooperation is really aligning with people that have similar mindsets, similar values, and similar understandings of what the ultimate goal is. Now, again, back to collaboration. Collaboration, you might not have an end goal. You might just be figuring things out. Your goal is to create a show, but what's the end going to look like? They might have some ideas. You might have some ideas. Then you sift through what's best, what's going to work, how's it going to be put together, who's got the best renderings from AI. Now, back to cooperation, you rely on the people you trust. Again, there's a lot of experienced people within this industry, whether it's live entertainment, concert touring, experiential, install, theatrical, film and TV, etc. Those experiences, really allow people to kind of create these communities of people they trust and, really have an end goal and get there in the shortest amount of time and the easiest path to success. But that's just me. I would love to hear, if anybody else has any ideas on how to help distinguish collaboration and cooperation, because, it's a really important topic that we discuss on our side, that we're trying to really instill, working together, but working together in, a way that people are learning, people are sharing and contributing, and then people are really being a part of, something better. This country alone has, sent rockets to the outer space, almost every couple of months, and I think there's so many big things out there that, we can achieve, and that's, again, just a frame of mind that I think everybody should start to focus on.
Talking about collaboration, cooperation, I think a lot of this has started, as far as collaboration is concerned, was the nature of theater and creating a work of art, no matter what you're doing, whether you're an actor, designer, technician, and you're all collaborating on this work of art. And there's an ownership, there's a sense of ownership about it. But there's also a sense of spreading out. For instance, I'm a musician and a designer. So a lot of times when I design, I deal with music, and I know you do as well because you work with a lot of musical acts, but I feel more like I have something to do with the music, even shows that are in process of creating the music. And it's the same thing with actors and costume designers, that the costumes are part of the performance. They're part of the actor and enabling the actor to create the performance. And I think that's where the genesis of the word collaboration comes from. There's also the phenomena of synergy, where your input collecting with the other artists' and technicians' input creates something even larger. That is something that happens throughout collaboration. Whereas some people can feel that cooperation is that you've got your own specialty and you are cooperating with the other specialties around to create it. So I think that may be where people are wondering, or some people could wonder, that maybe it's really not the same thing. Could you expand upon that, Cort?
Yeah, and that's a great point there. I mean, sometimes we might look at a band and you have an all-star drummer, an all-star guitarist, an all-star bass, and an all-star singer, and they are all the best in their field within their band, and they're all, really, and what I'm saying is cooperating. And, and I just want to say, the reason a lot of this comes up is because the word collaboration has become, again, diluted and watered down, because it seems like an interesting way for people to kind of jump in where they might not be able to jump in. They might say, hey, can I collaborate with you on this, even though they might not have a background in that field. They might not be the best. They'd want to collaborate and learn. And so again, I absolutely agree that collaboration is a little bit more open-ended and really allows for the discovery of new ideas. And then the process of collaboration, really is finding those best people who can do the very best thing. And just, that's how NASA was built. It's, bringing in the best minds in the world and, with an end goal of sending Apollo up to the moon, that's cooperation. And I think that's where, I'm hoping the industry, and honestly, I'm seeing the industries start to head that way. Without the open-endedness, building these wonderful teams of people, the best in the business, really bringing in all the greatest minds. And then at that point, what else can we achieve? Shoot for the stars, shoot for the moon, because the possibilities are endless in that world.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's a great, and I agree with you. I think this is where the industry is turning. Absolutely.
It's funny. Bob Bonio's actually thrown another word into the ring, which is translate, that creative teams are going to have to take the AI output, figure out how to actually create, extend it, or intelligently work around it, augment it. So that's how the creative teams will translate what the AI is giving you into what actually has to be built.
Well, and honestly, AI is helping us act as translators. We all have different mindsets, different opinions, and we all act as translators. I mean, when I'm designing a show, I have this vision in my mind, but my job after I get it down into renderings and paper is to translate it to all the specialists to put it together, to add in those final touches. And so, because they don't see what I see. Now, AI is helping to act as a translator. It's two different languages. I don't speak the same language as a costume designer, but as a creative, I can definitely, hopefully, share an idea and translate it to them that makes sense in their own language. And we can align on a central idea. So Bob is 100% correct there. Translation and acting as translator is a huge part of our job and a huge part of this industry, to really share the knowledge we have, teach others about what we have up inside our heads, and then really, again, push forward into these unique projects. We're seeing so many cool things. We're seeing I mean, venues like the Sphere being built, we're seeing Saudi Arabia, really blossom with all these themed entertainment spaces. I mean, it's the world is moving so fast, and there are so many people, and now that the world is getting smaller, we need translation. There's still language barriers within this world. There's still cultural differences, and that's where translating really helps align people and achieving such cool things that are happening around this world.
What I wanted to ask before, Cort, and David touched on it a little bit when he was talking about ownership of your work. Prior to our interview, I looked through your portfolio, and some of the work that you've done is absolutely stunning, and the visuals are pretty spectacular. I know you've won an award for the Morgan Wallen Tour last year for lighting design. With all of these creative things that you're doing, and the way AI works in collecting information and doing its thing, how do you protect your intellectual property, your artistic property that you've created? I mean, as you do more and more and more, it's not going to be long before people are saying, hey, we want that look that Cort did for Morgan Wallen or Lainey Wilson or whoever. So your work is going to be duplicated and essentially stolen. How do you protect that?
Yes. And that is, that's the tough thing in this world. And, I also want to look back that, while my work is great, I also find a lot of my references seeing other architecture around the world. How many shows have put a pyramid on stage, and that pyramid was built by the Egyptians or the Mayans so long ago. So, I mean, we're all finding creative references in things from the past. There's a lot of, it is tough to find true ingenuity these days, true authentic creations that are just out of this world. And when you do find it, it does live on. And, I don't see myself as an Egyptian who has just created a pyramid, but, I think I would find it, flattering that my design continues to live on in a way, even though it's being replicated or changed or disassociated. Now, the tough thing with concert touring is these ideas come and go. That idea is built for 1 to 2 years, and then ultimately it's recycled and, changed and pushed on to the next one. So much unlike the pyramids or, the Eiffel Tower that has been, around for hundreds of years or thousands of years. So, it is tough. And I think, Bob and I had this discussion as well. Now the internet is not scraping all of this information together. That's not what it's doing. Now with AI, you're allowed to build your own language. And so we can go back to language because it's a large language model. So if I build in my aesthetic and I say, I really like focusing on minimalism and brutalism and, ancient architecture as my influences. And so those are all characteristics of mine. Now, anybody else can do that, but, again, the more you kind of utilize those things and utilize those processes, the better your designs are really going to stand out as their own. I hope that, that again, I really feel that only time will tell, to see, and hopefully people continue to have true creative thoughts when it comes to designing things and really trying to push the boundaries. Sometimes we're also limited by the venue or the space we're in. I do give credit to film and television for always, really finding and filling every nook and cranny with lighting or video or scenic. Those are really unique touches, and those live on forever. So it's such a hard thing to say how the world will continue to evolve our ideas And hopefully, they live on. I don't think anybody would ever really recreate the U2 360 tour. It was so iconic in its heyday. It's such a staple that people look back at. Mark Fisher, a true architect and true creative mind that came up with that. Again, a lot of people use it as an example of something that was just originated from a designer's mind, and nobody ever really replicated that. And, I did hear that they have, I think, part of that stage in Salt Lake City now. So I hope to go see it one day, because I'm glad it continues to live on, a lot of that steel structure.
Well, maybe it's generational also. If you think about concert touring, everyone was so impressed when Madonna made her entrance into the Super Bowl halftime show. Well, if you like that, let me show you Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra making her entrance into the city of Rome. Certainly more than one generation, but, not too many people are students of history.
Yes. Yeah. That's, and it's funny that you say that. I spoke with some students at the Academy of Live Technology. There's one in the UK and there's one in Lidditz, Pennsylvania now. And these students, we really dug in on the Renaissance era and the Egyptian era, the Greeks. They all had spectacle. That's what the Romans called it. It was spectacle. That's what they were doing in their massive arena. And then in the Renaissance, in the Renaissance era, they had stage lights. Now they were powered by candles and mirrors and reflectors, but our industry has been around a long time, and it's just continued to evolve with technology. And, now we have moving lights that, can practically swim underwater. That's, incredible. We have the brightest beams in the world now. We have, all these evolvements. And again, you just kind of have to credit technology for continuing to kind of carry and push. But you also have to credit the people that, continue to evolve these things. And sometimes we should all look back. Looking back really helps us see where we've been, but also see where we can really continue to push and bring up a lot of that history that may have been forgotten.
Speaking of looking back in history, what is your history? Where did you get trained? Where did you come up with these wonderful skill sets? Did you study lighting design in college, or did you skip right through that and just go off to work?
So, when I was in high school, I learned the program Maxon Cinema 4D, and that allowed me to create things in 3D space. Now, I was planning to use it for film and television, creating motion graphics, creating, visual effects. I was always so amazed with seeing the visual effects on movies like Star Wars, and, really just entranced by what Industrial Light and Magic did. And, that was a big inspiration. But then, I found out that, Cinema 4D was also used for rendering. You could render installations, you could render designs, you could render theatrical productions, you could do all these things. So luckily, I found myself just out of high school, not really knowing where I was going to end up, and I was given a job rendering for a few notable designers within this industry. And I was rendering for them. They would send me sketches, and I would turn their napkin sketches into 3D designs, and I would help them visualize what was in their mind. And that's not even that long ago. So, we were really bringing on such a new, or what I thought was a new process of taking 2D sketches, rendering it into 3D. They were then selling them to their clients and really helping this creative process.
So you were doing this when you were like 18?
I was, yes.
Good for you. Wow.
And so, again, I did not know about this industry. I did not know that, you could really design things and then have it be broken down and put into a truck and sent off to the next city. That was, still a new concept. And that's why, a few designers told me, they said, look, the things that you're creating they're beautiful, but some of them defy gravity. Some of them don't have scale. Some of them would never work. Some of them you could never power without knocking out the entire city block, so all those things, I had to learn. So fortunately enough, they allowed me to go on their tours as a lighting tech. And then I also learned as a stagehand from the bottom up as well, because I wanted to know if I'm rendering a truss, how big is it in person? I see it. I can see it in 3D. I can spin it around, but in person, I had no idea, how tall it was, how big it was. And I would start to model my own pieces and really kind of.
So you basically got your MFA at the School of Hard Knocks.
That's correct. And fortunately
Good
enough,
for you.
A lot of those designers took me under their wing, taught me a lot. I still work with them to this day. They are still doing, as I mentioned, they're still working. And, that's what I love about this industry is, the passion of just continuing to add and create and do these things, which is so unique, and again, some things are constantly changing. Some things change every decade, but either way, we're all moving forward. We're all moving in, a pretty unilateral direction.
When did you first meet Anders, and why is your company called Raw Cereal?
Raw Cereal. Obviously, if we look back at the pandemic, there was nothing we could do. I mean, I was trying to be a part of social distancing events, as well as any events on TV. We did a few kind of studio-based filmings. Everybody was very protective. And of course, the difference is everybody had different experiences. Some people were working, some people were not working, some people were really, trying to find something to do. So coming out of the pandemic, though, I was immediately hit with a wall of work, and I couldn't have been happier. I was designing, I was touring, I was putting on shows, I was just creating and drawing and creating and drawing. But I wasn't sure. I was doing a lot of this alone. And that's when I really started to network and connect with people. And Anders actually found me. He hired me to design a unique set piece for an artist named Kid Cudi, who is a well-known rapper, hip-hop star. We had created this set piece together, and we had only known each other maybe 8 hours, our first day. And the second day, we said, hey, we should maybe go out to breakfast and connect with each other. Let's get to know each other. And where we were doing rehearsals, there was only one diner, and that diner was in a Ford dealership in Van Nuys, California. So we went to the same dealership diner every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was our catering. That's how we were feeding ourselves. We were chatting, we were talking, we were learning about each other. Anyways, by the end of that week, we had eaten everything on the menu. I couldn't tell you how many steak and eggs I've had. I couldn't tell you how many Reuben sandwiches and turkey sandwiches and soup of the day and all those things. It was amazing food, but 7 to 10 days of one menu gets you pretty sick of having diner food. So by the end of it, I asked the waitress, I said, do you have anything else off the menu? I would love just a handful of cereal. I'm feeling massive. And she said, what do you mean, raw cereal? I said, yeah, I would love some raw cereal. I don't need milk. I just need a handful to keep me going. I got to get back over to rehearsals, and raw cereal. I looked at Anders. I said, that's it. That's what we need in life is raw cereal. Just a handful to keep you going. And that handful, that handful did keep me going, and kept on moving. And now everywhere we go, we've got cereal boxes, we've got unique things. Cereal kind of, it really is the meal of some people. It's a breakfast morning, for a lot of kids. But, for me, it's a handful of cereal every once in a while to keep me going.
Peace.
Is that a box of raw cereal behind you on the bookcase?
That is, yes.
There you go. So, unfortunately, we're running a little bit out of time, but we always like to finish up these interviews with some advice that you may have for young people getting into the industry, especially your end of the industry. And is there any words of wisdom that you have for them?
There's so much advice out there, and I've been given a lot of advice myself, and that advice is to continue pushing forward. Really, you gotta go work hard. Sometimes you have to go from gig to gig to gig, and that's where you learn. And I've learned the most in my life at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and sitting there kind of bashing my head out saying, how do I get this done? Where do I go from here? So you have to put in the hours. Sometimes you got to stay late. Sometimes you got to hang around and really connect with people. But those are the connections that last you the longest. And that's kind of how our industry, really finds those relationships is, staying late, connecting with people, and, challenging yourself to really push on past, your breaking point. As long as you're safe and healthy and still happy, that's what's important. But if you are comfortable pushing yourself into that late night, being there when the sun comes up and, designing or programming or being a part of a gig, a collective gig, that's the goal. And, I really find peace in those moments as well. And, it's some people really are night owls and work the best, at when the world is quiet and you can get your work done in a peaceful state. And I think a lot of people just need to find that peace.
Wise words.
Good advice.
Well said.
Well, Cort, thanks again for being with us today. And I think you're an inspiration to a lot of young artists and older artists like us. I mean, I can't imagine a better example of someone who learned the technology and was extremely wise when you were young, when you were a teenager, and learning those programs, because that was your ticket. And I think a lot of people should try out, go ahead and explore these new programs, explore AI, explore all this stuff, because you're just going to make yourself more marketable. And once you get in, you're there.
Exactly.
Once you walk through the door,
Yeah.
you're there. It's getting that door and opening the door. That's the key.
Right.
So, thank you
I'd like
so
to
much.
just say that if you want more of Cort Lawrence, he'll be on the X Live concert touring series sessions at LDI this year.
I will.
On Saturday, December 6th. So
Nice.
join us for that.
Are you going to be
Shameless plug.
Are you going to be at the Dining for Dinosaurs dinner? Because you're much too young to be a dinosaur.
He's not a dinosaur, but as an X Live speaker, he's certainly
I
invited.
know. I know. We were talking about that the other week. It was like, and we're not invited, of course, but that's a whole nother story.
No, but you can buy a ticket.
It's going to be kind of frightening when he's 60. I mean, this is actually one of the best interviews we've ever had. I can only imagine what another 30 years is going to do.
Well, I hope he'll come back
to have him
before
back.
then.
Yes.
Yeah, right. We got to get you back here.
I will come back anytime. I look forward. Who is going to be in Vegas, though? I would love to.
We're all Vegas.
All of us.
Vegas. Yeah.
We're all
amazing.
going.
We're all there.
It's going to be fantastic.
We do a show. We do a live Light Talk Live there on Sunday, and where we actually do a show with an audience, and it's a lot of fun. So
I love it.
People look at us, they say, "Oh my God, those are the weirdos that I listen to a lot." That's,
There's
What's
little
older
I
than
better
dinosaur? Like dining with single cell organisms?
Yes, right. Dining with amoeba.
we're gonna do a special thing this year in Light Talk that we started to talk about, but we're not talking about it today. So
Have
we'll
you
talk
all
about
seen
it
that
then.
very funny podcast? I posted a link to one of them.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of dogs with
Yes,
earphones and
dog
microphones.
talk.
They are
Yes. It's
hilarious.
Awesome.
They are so funny.
Right. A lot of people can refer to us as dog talk, but they use a different word for dog. So. Anyway, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, you will have to deal with me, Snoot, from the Snoot Group. And don't get it twisted. Just because I married one of these losers does not mean I will go easy on you. So don't with me.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
Coming to you from St. Bart's, Long Beach, the Lone Star State, Washington, D.C., New York City, and the Steel City at the confluence of 3 rivers, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
very nice.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
Once again, we want to thank our guest, Cort Lawrence, for being on the show today. And we will see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.